Easy now. Papa got things making headlines.
Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. I'ma have to cut you off, like right now. You see, I don't want to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me tried the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they finished change. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael-Shawn and I'm here with my co-host, Christopher Kidd. Make sure you follow us both up on the tweet machine. Follow me at Mike Dugar, Mikedugar. You can follow us on YouTube as well or subscribe. You know how that goes. Seahawks Man, the number 2 man, is the YouTube channel. We appreciate all the love and support all season. This is Offseason Bag. Stay with us. We appreciate it. Chris, talk to him.
What is up, everybody? It's been a minute, but we are back. You can follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206 and that's CKid206.
Yeah, as you guys noticed, we slowed down the cadence a little bit in terms of how often we're putting out shows. Got 2 in the offseason, man. We can't do 2 a week in the offseason, plus a weekly breakdown of plays. Nah, we'd crash and burn. And let's be honest, ain't that much shit to talk about, in the offseason. There's some speculations here, speculations there. Like, we wasn't going to recap the Pro Bowl, so it wasn't going to do that. Chris asked me the day before the Pro Bowl. I said, you going to watch the Pro Bowl? I said, hell no. I ain't going to watch that. Did you watch the Pro Bowl, Chris?
I watched a little bit of it, and I was like, it's okay.
So I watched it. I watched Geno. I did. Actually, I should say this. I started that Sunday. We'll get into. You guys have a lot of questions that we're going to answer in the show. I started that Sunday. I rewatched Super Bowl 49, and just like the whole game. And I have a bunch of takeaways from it. But then I looked up and I saw Geno throwing a touchdown like George Kittle. So like, oh damn, maybe I should turn this on. And then I watched the rest of the thing on mute. So I was very confused by some of the other games that they was doing. Like when Geno's team had won, I was like, oh, that was quick. And then I go and then they're like, some guys are climbing some walls and on some sleds. And then this is all on mute. So I can't really hear the explanations of anything. And then they're back playing flag. I was like, oh, okay. So there was 2 games. All right, cool. I go back to doing something else. And I'm like, what is Stephon Diggs and Amon-Ra St. doing on these trampolines? I was very confused. I watch a lot of stuff on mute. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So it's very, very strange. And then they went back on the field. I'm like, oh, there's Derek Carr. I'm like, what? So I was like mildly entertained, but watching it on mute, I'm sure did not help. I'm sure you did not watch it on mute.
I didn't know, but I thought it was cool. It was interesting. It was better than what we've been used to seeing for the last 20 plus years. It was a new style. They tried it. It worked. I don't agree with doing multiple different things within the game. Just play the game.
Right.
Because Mike is wondering, what? I thought the game was over, and now you're doing this. Oh, now the Derek Carr is out there. I think they should just stick the flag. It is what it is. Play that and go from there. I don't really care about the dodgeball. I didn't even watch that.
I didn't see any of the dodgeball.
Yeah, it just okay. You're playing. What does dodgeball have to do with football?
Yeah. Well, I can see, and I thought about this, to your point. I thought about why they tried other games in between that. Like when I was sitting there thinking about it after, I was like, oh, they're probably trying not to just leave out the big guys or any of the special teamers.
First of all, I seen a tweet from Josh Jacobs that said, this is the stupidest. He says it's dumb, basically, what they're doing. He just want to go on vacation. Yeah. I don't imagine too many fat men are like, damn, I don't get to play flag football. So we just don't get to do nothing? Now, Mike, to your point, there might be a couple of guys that had a really good season, and one of their goals is to be a Pro Bowler. And you know what that means? You get to play in a fun game. So maybe that, to your point, that could be the case, but I don't imagine too many guys are like, damn, I got left off the flag football team, so I got to play dodgeball. I don't know.
True. That could be true. I did not read any of the recap stories from the thing, so I'm very curious how the feedback went. Maybe if I run into, I just asked some of the guys, I asked Tariq or something like that. Quandre asked how they liked it. So I saw Quandre play. I think Tariq played too. Geno. Yep. So yeah, see how they liked it, because it's really about the players. It's how engaged the players are will determine the quality of the product. So if they like that format, then it will continue to be entertaining. They'll be able to talk trash. And one thing I did like, someone pointed out to me, I thought that was good. I noticed in real time, they weren't wearing helmets. And I think the Pro Bowl, you should see the guys. Like you should, because some of these dudes are under the radar players, and to see them without their helmets on just kind of boosts their status. Like to see, like Jalen Ramsey's already pretty famous, but like even just a George Kittle or like a Juszczyk or some of these other guys, even Justin Jefferson. Like just to see their faces, while they're doing their thing, it kind of was like NBA style. I did like that because honestly, I didn't know what some of these guys look like that. I'm not even gonna lie to you because they wear helmets. So
Yeah.
Particularly some of those guys who are in the AFC, like I was like, who is Smith? Like, oh, that's what Roquan Smith looks like? You kidding me? No clue what Roquan looked like without his helmet. So I thought that, and I'm someone who follows the league. I can only imagine what it was like for some of these other people who were like casual viewers of it. So hopefully the players enjoyed that. Will I watch next year? Probably not. Probably not.
What's probably going to happen is in a few years they're probably going to have a media flag football game put on by the NFL where all media members, The Athletic, ESPN, probably do a big game like that.
That would be dope. Or just like a celebrity flag football game, like the NBA has. Like do that. Get whoever. I saw Snoop Dogg out there. I saw some.
Yeah, he was the coach, believe it or not.
I can believe Snoop Dogg do anything Snoop Dogg put his mind to. I'm pretty sure he called like a boxing match a couple years ago.
Yeah, Snoop has dabbled and done I think everything.
And I'm pretty sure he's called a hockey game before. Pretty sure he's been he's done hockey and boxing. And this is Snoop with no background really in sports other than like a youth football league. So yeah, anything Snoop, I believe Snoop Dogg could put his mind to anything. I'm surprised they didn't call Kevin Hart because they call Kevin Hart for everything.
Right? NBA All-Star game. Kevin Hart, you want to do something? Sure.
Yeah. So I was mildly entertained. Shout out to Geno though. Geno threw like 4 or 5 touchdowns in that thing.
And he was looking regular season form to me.
Yeah. No, he looked good. And guys playing with all the jewelry on, that was very baseball-y.
Yes, I'll never understand that. I got all this. I even when you do it, I'm like, how? All it takes is one oopsie, and now your chain's broke, and now you're mad. It's like, why are you wearing it?
I didn't buy it for people not to see it. That's the answer. That is the answer. But while we've been away, you guys have things. Not much has transpired in the offseason. Geno gave a couple interviews, stuff like that. But you guys have a lot of questions about stuff. Chris and I have a lot of answers about stuff. So we shall roll with your Twitter questions about the offseason. A lot of good content. Thank you for all the questions. Very good stuff. Gave me and Chris an excuse to just not an excuse, but it helped us figure out what you guys want to hear us talk about. So we have our things, but it's like we're here for y'all, the people. So what we got, Chris? What we starting with?
We'll start with Chris Leeper at Rosebug_22. If Carter and Henderson Jr. are gone at number 5, do you agree the Hawks should look to trade down? And then part 2 of this question, I think Richardson would be perfect to sit and learn behind Geno, and the Seahawks should take him top 20. Do you agree?
That was Will Anderson and Jalen Carter in the first part of the question? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Will Anderson. I think one of my takeaways from the Senior Bowl that I was at last week is that the general thought is that there is a significant gap between Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter from Georgia, Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. A significant gap between them and the rest of the non-quarterback prospects. So, like, I think a lot of mock drafts, including one from Dane at The Athletic, has Seattle taking Tyree Wilson, the kid from Texas Tech, at like 5 or 9 or something like that. And it's my understanding that, like, there's a gap between, like, Jalen, Will, and the Tyree kid. Not to say the kid's not good, but there's just thought to be a gap. It actually honestly feels similar to last year, where there was, like, in terms of needing a tackle, there seemed to be, I forget who was the top guys. It was like Evan Neal, Icky, Charles Cross. I think that, and there was like a thought that if you wanted a tackle, you should trade back if those 3 are gone. So like I remember one of the sentiments was like, hey, if Charles is gone, Icky's gone, and whoever the other guy, I think it was Evan Neal of the Giants. If those 3 were gone, the Seahawks should have traded back instead of taking like the Northern Iowa kid, Penning, who the Saints ended up taking like 17 or 18 or something like that. This feels like a very similar situation, where if you can't get Jalen, you can't get Will, and you don't want to take a quarterback, then you call somebody and say, hey, who wants 5, and see what you can get for someone to come up. Because someone will come up. It doesn't always have to be for a quarterback. I think the Eagles, what did the Eagles trade up to get Jalen Waddle? I think the Eagles traded up to like what pick? No, excuse me, not the Eagles. Who does he play for? The Dolphins. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. The
Brain
Dolphins.
fart.
Yeah, because the Dolphins had like pick 3, I think, traded it to the Niners so they could get Trey Lance, and the Niners went from 12 to 3, but the Dolphins still ended up taking Waddle at like 6, I want to say, so they went back up from 12 to 6. So and that's for a receiver. So you get teams trading up for a bunch of stuff. So I think that if those two aren't there, you call some people, you call the Panthers, honestly, and you say, hey, you need Will Levis. Or however you say, you just do it, because the Panthers need their quarterback.
This next one.
What's the second part of that question?
Oh, my bad. Yes, there was 2 parts. How did I forget? Second part is Richardson. You think he'd be a perfect fit to sit and learn behind Geno?
Chris, have you watched a little bit of this guy, Anthony Richardson from Florida?
I have not yet.
Okay. How do I want to? Okay. The Josh Allen comp is one that you seek a little bit because he is there's so many adjectives for this kid. Let's go with volatile. Let's go with that. You might see a play. Have you seen any of his highlights?
I've seen highlights, but I haven't dove into it as much yet. I just seen, a YouTube highlight. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so he'll have a highlight where he like spins out of 3 tackles and then runs 60 yards for a touchdown. And then he might have a play where he just like misses a read and throws the ball directly to the other team or something.
Very Josh Allen like.
Exactly. Very early Josh Allen in particular. And Josh still does some of that stuff too.
That's why they're not in the Super Bowl.
Correct. Well, that's one of the reasons. Turns out Von Miller getting hurt didn't matter quite a bit.
Yep.
So they have a few reasons, but that's not the comp. That's the comp, but it's not. That's like sometimes comps can be unfair because I think you would like this guy because he's got a really strong arm and he can move, man. He's like.
It's like what we saw on Saturday with our quarterback when we played in our flag game.
Yes.
I'm just a lesser version.
Yeah, he's big. I don't know what the measurements are on Richardson, but he's not like a small guy like Kyler. Like he's a big dude, can run like Justin Fields, which is a crazy thing to say, but you know what I mean. Like can run like Justin, launch that thing, and then might throw the ball to the other team. Or
that's a big problem.
you play Madden, right? So he's like a guy who might have a couple plays a game where it's like, did his controller freeze? I don't play video games, but I'm used to enough to know that reference. So yeah, he's one of them guys. So I bring that up so you can have the context of.
So it sounds like it's the battle of the bees, boom or bust here.
He very much is. I was talking to a general manager, in Mobile when I was down there. I was like, we're talking about a bunch of stuff, and it came up my opinion on Anthony. I was like, whoever takes that kid is going to win Executive of the Year in 2 years, or they're going to be fired in 2 years. I really don't think there's a middle. Like I do think that like when you put your eggs in that basket, you're either going to hit it, or like you said, everybody's out of there in a couple of years, back to college, back to work with the Patriots or wherever they came from. Like he feels like that type of prospect, and every prospect is not that. To me, because I don't think every prospect wins you Executive of the Year. Like I think taking Mac Jones, for example, there was no chance to win Executive of the Year off of like the strength of that pick. Nor where I think you get fired for taking like a Mac Jones, particularly where you took him. This dude though, yeah, he seems like he's gonna get you to the promised land, gonna get y'all to the unemployment line. So I bring all that up to say I'm not in favor of him sitting behind Geno because that kid is too much fun. You got to play a dude like that. I'm trying to think of a team that could, like the Panthers should just go ahead and take him and just let God take the wheel. Let Frank Reich get a hold of him and let him throw bombs to DJ Moore. Behind the pretty decent O-line too out there in Carolina. I think that should be the way to go. So no, I don't think the Seahawks should have him sit. I'm just not a big fan of guys sitting anyway, because the benefit of a guy being young and cheap is you finding out if he's good along the way. Like, I think one thing that the Jets should be happy with, and the Jets fans should too, is that they found out that Zach Wilson isn't it, and it took him 2 years. You don't want a Jordan Love situation. You don't even want like who else? Chris, who did I mention earlier when we were talking about this?
I thought it was just those two.
Was it just Jordan Love?
It was Jordan. No, it was Jordan Love, and it was who you just Zach Wilson. Those are the two you gave.
Yeah, there's value, and you have to play the guy to see if he's the future, because you're not just guaranteed to win a Super Bowl because he's good. Like look at the Chargers. They've had 3 years of Justin Herbert. They know he's very good and have won no playoff games. 0.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's like it's not enough. You have to play the guy to find out, if he's good. You don't want that Packer situation. Like Mac Jones is another example. Yeah, like they've played him, so they kind of have an eval. The weird ones where you get with like the Tua, Jalen Hurts, where you throw him in there in the middle of the rookie year or something because somebody got hurt. Justin Fields was like that too. No, play the guy. And if you give Geno a multi-year deal and you take Anthony at 20, that means Anthony just rides the pine. And I don't think there's not as much value as you guys think in riding the pine. There is some, but there's nothing like live bullets. Nothing. So yeah, play. No, Anthony's too fun to sit on the bench, y'all. Yeah, go YouTube that. Chris, I'm gonna send you some stuff after this because that brother is fun.
This next one comes from Eddie Goodman at EDW Goodman. Thoughts about taking a shot on Hendon Hooker? Was looking like an above-average QB before the ACL injury, and also out of the SEC.
Yeah, I think you can get a quarterback from anywhere. There are some spots where I'm like, okay, you play in the SEC, but I don't necessarily need my quarterback to have played in that competition because sometimes when you play with those guys, sometimes the receivers around you are so goddamn good that it also throws off the eval. I don't think it threw off like a Joe Burrow eval, but like you did have to really know what you were looking at because it wasn't just the numbers. Like, well, he was throwing to Justin Jefferson and who was the other? Chase. They were on the same college team. I would have thrown 60 touchdowns too, throwing to them, handing off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire too. Crazy. You look at some of the receivers that these Bama quarterbacks have had, so and them dudes is wide open. So I'm not a big fan of taking Hooker, which, man, I don't know if Chris, do you know if kids are still mean? Like little kids, like middle school, like kids in my middle school are really mean. So if you had a name like Hooker or Bush or I don't know, just a name that you made fun of. Yeah. Last name was Gay. To
answer your question, kids are still kind of mean.
They're still mean like that. I know you work with kids, so that's why.
Yeah, as a mentor, I hear stories about some of these kids, but then sometimes I'm like, stop being a little punk. Like, what? You get teased about that? I had to go through short jokes from like 2nd grade to 8th grade, and then it didn't stop in high school. You know what I did? I just, found out I can do something better and beat them at it. So,
no, kids is brutal, man. You get a name like Hooker,
Well, back in the day, I feel like what we went through was brutal. What they're going through is like, really? That's why you're crying? All right, bro. Wipe your nose and let's figure this out.
Yeah,
but continue.
They got to deal with cyberbullying. We had to deal with real bullying.
Man, man, what did Chris Rock say? We need bullies. Chris Rock had a great explanation as to why we need bullies. Imagine your child never gets bullied. He gets punked at his first job. How you think that's going to go for him?
Yeah, there are some life lessons to be learned.
You need bullies. You need assholes in this life.
Yeah, and even if we didn't need them, we're going to have them.
That was Chris Rock's entire point. You think because you a child, you're not going to get teased? Man, I wish they tease my child. I want him coming home in tears. That way when he gets out to the real world, he's not going to be he's used to it. Chris Rock, he had a famous line. He tells his kids before they leave the house, you ain't shit. I'm your daddy, yeah, but you ain't done nothing you ain't nothing. I'm just like, you know what? That's a fair point. You instill that in your kid now. That way when little Phil over here is cracking jokes, your son's just like, or daughter's like, what? My dad tells me I ain't shit. Who are you?
Wow, that is some parenting 101 from Chris Rock. I would not have thought that his parenting plan would have crept into the pod. But
it's also a joke, so maybe don't take it all the way in.
Nah, Chris one's of them guys who's Chris Rock. That is Chris Rock, one of them guys whose jokes are rooted in some truth. That's like kind of his bag, where his like jokes they're funny because they're true. That's like kind of his thing. Anyway, I brought that up just because when I think of that last name, I'm like, dang man, kids must have just had a time. That kid probably knows how to fight. That would be my guess. Anyway, the answer is no. I don't think that where you would have to take him, which is probably what your 2nd round pick, I would guess. I don't think that's worth it if you pay Geno. Like if you give Geno the long-term deal, I feel like it's very similar to 2012 with Russell Wilson and Matt Flynn in that like if you pay that guy, you should wait until like round 3 to get the developmental guy, which is what they did with Russell. Took him in the 3rd round. But if you don't, let's say you only have like a guy who's a good example. like if the Titans, they still have Tannehill under contract. If they were like, okay, we got Tannehill, we only got him for another year, so let's take Hendon, have him learn from, or just not learn, but just have him on the roster, develop in for the low, and then we can just let Ryan bounce, and then we already got our high draft pick, ready to roll. There's some other examples of teams doing that as well, but I could see like that's one that comes to mind. I think if the Lions were to do a similar thing, I don't know how long Jared's under contract, but let's say Jared Goff was on an expiring deal, and they're like, "Hey, let's take Hendon. We don't got to play him now because he hurt, and then next year, 2024, we don't have to take a guy. Although if Caleb Williams from USC is there, they should take him. But another discussion. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Seahawks doing that if they pay Geno. I think you need too much other stuff to try to win right now. Than to take like a quarterback with like pick 50, whatever. I think that's a luxury at this point.
This next one comes from Brian. Understanding that draft rankings will invariably change between now and the draft, how crazy is it to move up in the draft to get Carter or Anderson?
Crazy is probably not the word I would use. Oh, Jesus Christ. Jared Goff is under contract forever. Yeah, sorry, I just had to look that up. Oh, he doesn't have any guaranteed money after this. It's a terrible contract by the Rams. Yeah, I wouldn't trade up. Here's a scenario for the Seahawks, and we could, and this will be the case all offseason, I believe. Here's what you're hoping for. If you're a Seahawks fan, you hope that you get 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4, and then one of Will Anderson Jr. or Jalen Carter goes. That's your goal, is to get 3 quarterbacks, but to go before the Seahawks are on the clock. If that, and to do that, to avoid that, yes, you could just trade up, but I'm not a big fan of what you'd have to give up. Like, there's been trades to move up like 1 spot or something like that. Because really, what you need to get to like pick 4, probably, to guarantee you get Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. I think because the Seahawks need so much stuff, I get the thinking, but I just wouldn't do it. Because like Chris, what do you think they probably got to give up? Give up their 3rd round pick? Maybe.
Yeah, you give me some picks. They're gonna need to give something up. So maybe would it be crazy to say a 2nd round?
Yeah. See, like if let's say I'm the Colts, right? All right. Actually, let's do out this scenario. The Colts trade up with the Bears, right? So now the Bears have pick 4, Colts have pick 1. Colts pick, give me a quarterback, Bryce. They take Bryce. Take Bryce Young from Alabama, and then I think number 2 then is the Texans. Texans take C.J. Stroud. All right, so. Now you know that probably the Bears or the Cardinals could easily just take Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. So you got to, if you're the Seahawks, you're like, all right, we got to call the Bears to see if they'll give us, pick, if they give us pick 4. The Bears know who you want, and they want the same guy. You want to dry that price up. And if they're like, hey, man, we need pick 52. I'm not doing that.
That's tough.
I'm not doing it. I'm definitely not giving you any future nothing. No future first anyway. I give you like a future. See, I don't even know if I want to give you like future second. Maybe I would. Maybe I'll give you future second. But it would have to start with our 3rd round pick. And if you want anything higher, I'm hanging up. So what's going on? Do not disturb, and we, let you be blessed. So no, it's not crazy. Whoever, I forget who you said asked that. It's not crazy. I'm just not a big fan of it. Like those, you can get quality guys. I'm more a fan of a trading back than I am trading up. Even though, like I said earlier, there is believed to be a gap between Jalen and Will versus the rest of the defensive players, and that's fine. But I don't think it's enough to go up for either guy.
This next one comes from Mookie Alexander. Which position do you think the Seahawks will look to address more through free agency than the draft?
Okay, we both have position groups on this. Who you go ahead. You go first.
Well, we both agreed that we had the same answer, but yes.
Oh, that's right. We did.
That's what it was. It was linebacker. And for one, Jordan Brooks, he's hurt. Out until Mike, you talked about off whack. You said maybe Halloween. So sometime in November is best guess, right? So from that point on, if I were the Seahawks, I wouldn't want to draft a guy because the thing is, we'll get into this later with more questions, but the opportunities to win. Right now, if you take a young guy, you got to coach him up. Granted, you could take a starting caliber linebacker, but you need him to be pretty much elite. And the tough part is it's a brand new game. It's very rare that, you're going to draft a guy that knows what he's doing off the jump and is going to be your starter and he's going to be an impact player. Chances are he's going to have a lot of bad days. He's going to have more bad days than he has good days. And in that scenario, if I'm the Seahawks, I want to get a veteran. And there's a few guys I think the last podcast we did, I mentioned who the Seahawks should go out and get. And Mike has since agreed with that stance of going out and getting a Niners linebacker. I'm drawing a blank on his name already. Yes, that is someone who could come in, familiar with the West Coast and probably Pete's defense, because guess what the Niners did this year? They just played cover 3 and said, well, can you beat us? That's what they did, something the Seahawks have done in the past when they had the Legion of Boom. So with that being said, to answer the question, it's linebacker. And I think you definitely have to go through free agency as opposed to the draft, because in free agency, you can land a veteran that understands and knows his responsibility, and he can come in and give you that win first mentality and potentially opportunity for this team to go back to a Super Bowl. Whereas with the rookie, you're hoping he can be this elite talent, but you also are playing a game of, damn, I don't know. There's growing pains. So I do like the fact in this scenario that if you do go and get a veteran, he knows and understands his role, and he can definitely get this team to the next level until Jordan Brooks is healthy. And even then, maybe you can play musical chairs and you can move guys around. But I would definitely go through free agency and look to get an inside linebacker.
Yeah, that's one. Inside linebacker would probably be I forgot we agreed on that. There's also some decent guys. I was texting somebody earlier. I was like, the inside linebacker, like, free agency group is not great. And then I did a little bit more digging. I was like, oh, it's not too bad. Like, I don't think the Seahawks, actually, I'm pretty confident the Seahawks wouldn't do something like break the bank for, like, Tremaine Edmonds, for example. But, like, yeah, I was like, oh, you pick up Aziz, roll with that. I even think that the Eagles are probably in a position where they can't keep Kaiser White, if I'm saying his name right, and TJ Edwards. Probably have to lose one of those guys, especially since they drafted Nakobe Dean from Georgia last year, and probably just want to see Nakobe in year 2, just be the guy. Very similar to like a Jordan Brooks, KJ Wright, Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner type thing. So you probably can go pick up one of those dudes. And I still think you do got to draft a guy, but this doesn't mean you have to draft a guy super high, which is probably what they probably don't want to do because of all the other needs that they have in the trenches. So I do think they're going to address it in the draft too. But if there is a position, I think this was Mookie's question.
Yep.
Was that correct? Yeah. To Mookie's point, if there was a position, it's like, okay, maybe we hit this with a vet, spend a couple, grab a couple guys, and so we're not desperate in the draft. That would be one. I think honorable mention too is interior defensive line. Like there's some other guys also within the division. I've noticed a trend of the Seahawks picking up guys in the division. I'm sure you guys have kind of picked up on that as well. I could see them going after one of the two of A'Shawn Robinson or Greg Gaines down in the Rams. I don't think the Rams can afford both. Like that credit card bill is going to come due for the Rams at some point. Like the Saints too. Like eventually it just comes. And every once in a while those teams lose a guy or something. It's usually not a big guy, but they lose a guy or two. And they probably can't, just like the Eagles. I said they probably can't keep TJ and White. Probably can't keep A'Shawn and Greg. So you bring one of those guys over, perhaps. Or even if you go to like, we bring back Jay Reed or something like that. Even Dalvin Tomlinson and where's he at? I think the Vikings. Like just some options there too, because the Seahawks again are probably not going to be in a position where they want to draft that position very high. It's not something they've done a ton. You look at some of the guys that they've had starting in that spot. And I'm talking about interior D-line. Have had a ton of high draft picks. So especially if they're like, if we get Jalen and pair him with a vet, we can be in a good spot there. A vet in free agency, I mean. So, and I do think that, and we can talk about this a little later in the pod too, a lot of the cap casualty potential guys are in on the Seahawks team. They're at the interior D line. So they then may need bodies in free agency to fill that. You know what I mean? Like if they're like, all right, Puna's a free agent, Brian Monet's got a torn ACL. We saved like $4 million if they wanted to cut Q. They saved like $9 million if they wanted to cut Shelby. Okay, well, that's 4 of your 6 or whatever rotational guys. It's really, that means you're only bringing back Al Woods, so if you do all that stuff, you need some bodies. So I do think that D-line, interior D-line is also a possibility where like, let's make sure we got some bodies before we go into the drafts. We ain't got to take 3, interior guys in the draft. Remember that year they took 3 because they've had years like that. Like I think the year Marshawn retired, they took 3 running backs And then the year Doug Baldwin retired, they took 3 receivers. Like, I don't think they want to be in that spot with interior D-line.
This next one comes from @ayang_10. Do you think Rashad Penny resigns with the Seahawks?
What do you think, Chris? I'm curious on your thoughts.
I think he does. I think the Seahawks really like this guy. It's unfortunate what has happened year in and year out, and I don't think the Seahawks want to quote unquote give up on the guy and let him go elsewhere. Now, how much they're gonna pay him, I do not know, because that becomes tricky because he's not available as much as you'd want him. But again, Pete Carroll and this staff, they love what he brings to the team when he's healthy. I think he's a solid locker room guy. I haven't heard anything to say otherwise. And he's a cool dude. So I would really think the Seahawks would look to re-sign him. And I think Penny also wants to return to Seattle is another factor as well. I guess we'll just see how it plays out. To be honest, I thought last year he was probably end up leaving, and they were able to figure it out. So here we are again, another injury. Can the Seahawks, can they come to an agreement to keep him? I would like to think yes.
So here's what I think he'll have a shot to come back, but I do think it will be with the understanding that, like, okay, now you're in like compete for your job mode. With like, all right, because Ken's here, and there's not really a lot of reason to take the ball out of Ken's hands. So, but then again, they just saw Ken can get hurt at any time. Take one little thing, step the wrong way. You play at SoFi, that turf is hard on guys. So I do think they could be in a situation where, like, all right, Rashad, you can, pull back up. Here's a contract, but like they wouldn't tell him this, but I could see them like thinking in their minds, like, hey, if we draft some guy from, say we take a guy, we got Ken, we bring it back DJ, some of these other guys, DJ Dallas, that is, some of these other guys we got, and if we gets down to cut down day in August, he could be a guy who we move on from if these rookies are showing out. And I just don't think the demand will be very high. Like, I do think, like, if someone's going to take a chance on Rashad again after all these injuries, which again are unfortunate, like you mentioned, if someone does take a chance, it will be the team that knows him the best. So yeah, I'm with you. I just think that they'll probably protect themselves, and they can afford to do that a little bit more now, knowing that they have Ken. Ken changes the math on all of that. Ken could be one of the best backs in the league for the next couple of years. With his explosiveness and all that good stuff. So, and he can catch. Yeah, it could get crazy. It could get spooky. So yeah, I think he'll be back. But the team, if he is back, they're going to protect the hell out of themselves. And if he is back, I don't think there's a guarantee that he's on the roster, because he doesn't play special teams either. So you got to factor into that. You got to fill out your team with guys on special teams as well. That's not like a big deal, but it low key is when you're trying to fill out your roster and you're looking at how much guys cost, and you lose a guy like Travis Homer potentially, who's a big special teamer, stuff like that. So I think he'll be back, but no guarantee that he's back, and then also makes it through cut down day either.
What's the plan at linebacker? With Brooks' ACL tear, will Barton be the starter until Brooks is healthy?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Me and Chris were talking about this before it recorded, because Chris mentioned I'm kind of like guesstimating. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm kind of guesstimating. Or if I was them, like, all right, maybe we can expect Jordan back in October, because when he has surgery on like January 19th, so Halloween would be what, 10 months or something like that? Is that 9 months? I forget how to count months. Like, do I count?
We'll just say 9 to 10 months. How about that?
Let me see. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah. So somewhere in that range would be like a loose guess. This is not anything on like anyone's told me. That's just kind of how ACLs can work. So that's tough. My plan, here's what I would do, because I think the Seahawks are still working through this. My plan would be to sign bro from San Fran, Aziz. You draft my man Deion Henley from Washington State. Go Cougs. You draft him. You restricted free agent Tanner Muse. You can hit him with the original round tender. I think it's about like $2 million. You bring back Tanner, and then by then you got 3 guys. You got a young rookie guy you can develop. You got Tanner, who knows your system. You got a vet who's not costing you a ton, And then Jordan's going to come back. Jordan didn't die, so he's still on the team. And if you need to, you still have either one. Because one thing I've been worried about, Chris, with the linebacker position is someone to call the plays. I don't know how well equipped a new guy would be to do that. You would want a veteran, I think, to do that, not a rookie. Not to say someone like Deion couldn't try it, but I think preferably you want someone who's done it before. But I think in the event of my plan there, you could have one of your safeties do it. You give Quandre the green dot, and you just go from there. Quandre, Jamal, one of those two guys, I think, could easily hold on to that role, at least until Jordan gets back, and then you give it back to Jordan. So that would be my plan. What do you think, Chris? Grade my plan. Give me a grade if you're my scouting professor. What do you think of my linebacker plan?
You pointed out some flaws in your plan, so I'm going to give you a C. The one thing, damn. Yes, you passed. What you tripping for?
Yeah, that's true. I did. My mom ain't gonna like that, but I passed.
The one thing is the play calling issue. You bring in a new guy that is, and if it is Shire, God, am I saying his name? I should probably pull it up so I can look at it. If it is the home,
got it written down. I guess you can't see that I have it written down. My bad. I'm looking at it, so I'm thinking you can see it. You can't.
If you do have him, I think that brings it maybe to a B. But if you bring in, let's say you just you redo it with Tanner, that's a guy that really hasn't done it but one game and now 2 games. That was the Niners and the playoff game, the Niners, and the game previous, the last game of the season against the Rams, which was a bunch of backups.
I think Cody called the plays in those games.
Oh, it's Cody?
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay, well then scrap all that. Let's just assume Cody's not on the team for whatever reason, okay? They don't re-sign him, whatever the case may be. So now you're left with Tanner. You draft a guy. That is a big gap in an area where you need someone that you can trust to do the job. Now, this will lead to the next question, which shout out to Brian Mitchell for that one. So that's why I gave you a C, because it's just unknown. Unless you bring it in.
Do you have Aziz in my plan? Aziz is in my plan, by the way.
Well, then that's a B. So
here we go. See, I was like, yeah, okay. I got Aziz, Tanner, and Dayon.
They draft Dayon. Okay. So then we'll go to the next question. This is from, because this kind of ties it all in. This is from Jared. Is Cody Barton as trashy as some think? And then the second part is, who's one current player you would be surprised to see on the team when training camp starts? So the whole Cody Barton scenario.
Yeah, this is like, we could do a whole pod on Cody.
Cody is not as bad as everyone thinks.
Correct.
The thing is, not everybody watched the full game, I would say, of Cody. You only saw the lows. He struggled to start the season, which, to be fair, I understand why he struggled. It's his first time starting. My man has sat behind Bobby Wagner up to this point when he started. There's only so much you can learn by standing on the sideline and watching.
Correct.
You have to be out there and experience it, go through it. And he did those things. Maybe not your first article that you wrote on the team to start the season, but one of your articles during the season, I think it was maybe after the Detroit game, you mentioned how many times he's been targeted and the completion rate when he was targeted. Teams were 12 for 11. I think it was 11-11 or 12 for 12 when throwing his way. Meaning, if you want to get a first down, you want a completion, you just attack Cody. And what I was watching on film was a guy that was just unsure. Like, he knew where he needed to be, but the lack of playing time that he has had, his inability to pick it up so quickly had him out there where he was just in areas where he should have been, but he wasn't in. And you could see it like, ooh, he's getting there, but he's not there. As the season progressed, he was able to cover said holes. He was able to make plays, bat passes down. Hell, pick off Tom Brady. Those are things that he picked up on as the season progressed. So he got better, but is his best what the Seahawks need to be a Super Bowl contender? That is another discussion that we'll have to have once we figure out what this team looks like come, July, August. We'll see, okay, this is the roster they're going with. If Cody's a part of the plan, then they still believe that there's room for this guy to grow and he can make this team better, because I thought he improved week in and week out. I get it. And when you see it when you're watching the game, you're like, good Lord, man, what is he doing? But understand this is his first time doing it. He's going to make those mistakes. But as I watched him week by week, he got better and better and got more familiar with what the coaches were asking him. He was able to run up the seam with a wide receiver or a tight end. Those are things that when you're first doing it, it's like, this feels weird. It doesn't look right. And that's where you get the comments on Twitter like, dude, what is he doing? But I thought he got better, and he's not that bad. He just needs to hone in on things that he's not as good at and get better at it and better at it. And from there, we'll see what he can do.
In general, I don't think any player is as bad as their fan base thinks he is, or as good as the fan base thinks he is. I think that's usually generally the case. And that this probably applies for basketball too. I don't know as much about baseball fans and the players, but just generally speaking, like usually a guy is not as good as the fans think he is, nor is he as bad as the fans think he is. Generally, there are some exceptions to those rules, but I think Cody falls into that. He's fine. He's a fine player. I think he did get better, like quite a few things, but there were some lows.
Oh yeah, we saw the lows, Mike. We've had conversations like, what's going on here?
I do think too that he was probably one of the victims of how powerful the media can be in assessing players. So like you had, for example, and this is not to say this is his fault, but KJ was on the radio every Wednesday, right? And so when linebackers weren't playing well, you were getting a lot of linebacker commentary directed at those guys. So like that was probably not helping, because generally speaking, guys don't know that much about linebacker play. Like fans don't just like, oh yeah, he didn't fill that, gap. He's the fill guy, he's the spill guy. No one really knows all that stuff. But like KJ was breaking it down every week when they were playing bad. So it was just public for, it was available for public consumption every Wednesday. So that was very tough on that position in particular. I think that also skewed it a little bit, because like fans generally don't know the intricacies of damn near any position, really, like running back. So for those guys, that was tough, I think. So yeah, he's not as bad as people think. I still wouldn't. He's not in my re-sign plan, but he's fine. If somebody got hurt and you're like, all right, man, 57, come on in, I think you could get by. But if that's like your number one guy, I mean, we saw the playoff game. I don't think he or Tanner played particularly well. I think they attacked that level of the defense over and over again and had like 500 yards of offense. So like I think legitimately they had like 500. So yeah, no, this is the reason why he's not in my plan. But you're right, not as bad as people think.
And the part two was one current player you'd be surprised to see on the Seahawks to start training camp for 2023.
Yeah, mine would probably be Gabe, just because you got a combination of age, injury, and salary. Those are usually the guys that you can point to as cap casualties. I think Gabe's cap hit is like 11 or 12 million, something like that. And if you release him or trade him, you save like 6.5. And it's not that like Gabe's like, man, he's worth playing the role. It's just when the team has to manage your injuries. Like I don't think Gabe ever practiced on like Thursdays. Maybe it was either Thursdays or Wednesdays. He always had like a vet day off because of the knee. And that's one thing. But when they also have to manage you in a game too, that's just a tricky thing. Like that's hard to play at premium for. Like I think Gabe played like 60% of the snaps and Phil Haynes played like another 40. So it's like, okay, well, Phil's 27 and doesn't have this issue, and he can just routinely play an entire game. At that point, it just becomes like who can be on the field for how long and how much that should cost us. $6.5 million is honestly not that much bread to spend, but it is if you're a part-time guy at age whatever. I think Gabe will be 32 in this next season, so which is not like ancient. But yeah, I think that he's a candidate if they want to squeeze out some bread as a cap casualty for sure.
This next one comes from Aki Fairbanks. Aki Soba _. It's kind of fire right there. Aki Soba.
Oh, what are the? Yes, I just put that together. Yeah.
Right. What are the best things the defense can do to improve for next season? Add players through draft, free agency, change scheme, technique. What you got, Mike? What are you thinking? Combination of everything.
Yeah, the main thing they need is guys who are. This is so simple, but like guys who are good at both things, right? Like I was looking at some numbers, and I've already known this from the film and stuff too. But like they have guys like DT, really good rushing the passer.
Dale Taylor, that is, yes.
Yeah, Dale Taylor. Dale Taylor was really solid rushing the passer later on in the year. Not as good playing the run. And then you got like Shelby Harris, whose numbers against the run and his film against the run was really, really, really good. Probably one of the best on the team, actually. Not offering you as much in the pass game. Quentin Jefferson was like the opposite. Quentin was one of their best pass rushers besides Chenna. I would actually call Quentin their second best pass rusher this year. But Quentin's numbers and stuff in the run, not as great. Al Woods, giving you a lot in the run game, not as much in the pass game. So it's like you needed guys who could do both, like Chenna. Chenna was good in the run and defending the pass, like consistently at both. Quandre Diggs was also consistent at both. Ryan Neal was relatively consistent at both. The same goes for Michael Jackson for most of the year. Like they just need more guys who are good at both of those things. Because if you're not, you'll get exploited at the other thing you're not good at by the good teams later in the year. Like it's not gonna be every week, every play, you're gonna get exploited. But like as we get later into the seasons, like the teams that have the good coaches and the good front lines or whatever, good receiver, whatever it is, good scheme, good play caller, they're going to find out that, oh, man, you got like three dudes whose best thing ain't the run. So anytime you put them on the field on first or second down or third and short, we're coming at them. And you could see those problems reoccurring with the Seahawks. So I think that's the goal. I mean, that's the goal for every team. But, like, if you ask me, like, what do you do? Yeah, you need to get you somebody who can do both, right? That's a little, like, meme or, like, saying thing on social media, get you someone who could do both. That's what they need. I think one of the issues there, and why Pete used the word dynamic in his post-game press or his postseason press conference, was with that in mind. It was like, yo, we got a bunch of dudes who's good at like a part of this. They can play the run or they can play the pass or they can do whatever. It's like, no. We need guys who are dynamic at both. And the problem with that is the guys who are dynamic at both usually go in the first and second rounds. I have I'm sure I don't know if you guys follow this dude, Brandon Thorne, on Twitter. He does the Trench Warfare newsletter. It breaks down O-line play and D-line play really good. It's like a little Substack thing you got to pay for. I charge it to the company. But like one of the things he does is he like charts out all the D-line guys stuff and who has like a high quality sack, a low quality sack, who has like a cleanup sack. And he charts it all, puts videos in there and stuff like that. Anyway, and he ranks all the best guys, give them a sack score. The point of that is that also what he includes in there, which is really good in the chart, is where guys were drafted. And so I was looking at it the other day, and like I think when he ranks like the top 32 interior defensive linemen on their pass rush or sack score. And I think the only guy who wasn't a first or second round pick was like Quentin Jefferson. Actually, do I have it in front of me? I do. Yeah. So no, it's who's this right here? Danico Autry, Dwayne Smoot from the Jaguars, David Onion something from the Saints, Morgan Fox from the Chargers. So there's a handful of guys. But for the most of the guys who are in like the top 10, top 15 are first or second round picks. And then you get outliers like a Javon Hargrave or something like that. Or Javon Hargrave, I think it was third round pick. My point being is to get the dynamic guys, you have to spend the draft picks, typically. Or you have to trade for them or whatever, pay them in free agency. So that's tough. But the goal should be to get as many of those guys who can do both. That should be the goal for the defense this offseason.
This next one comes from Phil Leidick. Where is the best value in free agency?
Chris, this is a great question. The answer is there is none.
Like
there's really just not. Because if you think about it, the good players don't hit free agency. The really good ones, typically, every once in a while you get like a Chenna or these last few years have been a little weird because you had all these teams that were all of a sudden holding all these bad contracts because of COVID. Because all of the contracts in the NFL are structured assuming that the cap will rise incrementally each year. Well, then in 2020, it just dropped. Right? So it's like, oh, shit. And now we expected this guy's cap hit to be like 12% of the cap in 2020. Now that shit is like 19. Well, we're going to cut him now. So you get like a James Bradbury situation who was cut last year, but for a similar reason by the Giants. So other than like the cap casualty guys, most of the good players are either acquired by trade or the draft. It's not like you're not finding many superstars. Like the Chiefs got Tooney, their guard, who's a stud. They got him in free agency. I think last year, I think he played for the Patriots before that. But for the most part, It's not many all-pro guys. Like, go down the list of all the all-pros this year and look how many were acquired as an unrestricted free agent. A lot of those guys are going to be acquired via trade or draft, right? So that's the tough part. So when I was looking at free agency, I looked at every spot. I was like, there's not a lot of value at any spot. Like, if you do get a guy who's good, chances are, Chris, you're going to have to pay what it costs to get him. You know what I mean? And that's not really value to me. I feel like the only value you might find, if there is this position, because I did want to give this person an answer, you probably agree with me on this, Chris, is running back. Because they don't cost a ton, and they outperform their contracts probably better than anyone in the league. I would.
They always do.
Yeah, like
but then the
running back outperforms the shit out of those contracts.
But then you're reminded as to why you just go get another running back once thing gets tough.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they're outperforming them on a veteran deal, they damn sure outperform them on a rookie deal.
Exactly.
You know? So that's I'm gonna look at the list real quick because I remember the list really supporting that. Right. So like Saquon, if he has free agency, I would be surprised if he makes more than the tag. But even if he does, I would imagine him being an outlier, right? Yeah. Someone like Josh Jacobs is probably not going to make more than the tag. He just led the league in rushing, man. Like, that's an all-pro player who, if you look at what other all-pro players would get on the market at their positions, it's ridiculous bread. For Josh Jacobs, it might cost you $10 million to have Josh. Like, that's a really good example. Or even like Deontay Foreman, who's beast. He has some beastly games this year. Miles Sanders. Like, I'm looking at some of these dudes. You could put these guys behind a good old line and they could get busy, man. Mostert. I think Jamal Williams, didn't he just break Barry Sanders' record?
Yeah, he went insane.
He was scoring every week, man. And Jamal Williams will probably cost the team, $7 million maybe? So yeah, if there is value, it is at running back. But even then, like Chris, like I say every year, just draft the next dude from Bama, and eventually you'll get a 1,000-yard rusher. Do that every year.
This next one comes from D'Artagnan. Do you think Tyreek Smith will be a factor next season, considering the Seahawks have Darrell Taylor, Mafe, Geno Smith, and potentially some of our top picks being first or second round on the D-line next season?
So read me the name of who asked that again.
D'Artagnan.
I think I'm not even going to try that, but I think that question was asked because they kind of know that the answer is no. Like, that felt like a question in the back end of it. It was like, oh, damn, this answer is probably no, huh? Because the more you think about it, you expect Tyreek to be involved. I think it was like a 5th-round pick last year, had like a hip groin thing. As someone whose hip and groin usually routinely hurts, by the way, after I play football, I can see why Pete just calls them all the same thing. My hip and my groin be on fire after I play sometimes. So I can see, and my little Therabody gun thing broke. So my stuff really be on fire. So I can see why Pete just calls it hip groin, because you're right. All that shit hurts. You don't know where the pain comes from. It all just hurts. But I think for all those reasons that were thrown into the back of that question, the answer is probably no. It's because here's the difference. This is why draft capital, like draft status, matters, and why like everyone being considered equal on a team is complete bullshit. Like Darrell Taylor, when he missed his rookie year, there was urgency to make sure he was involved in the game plan, make sure he was up to speed, make sure he was ready to be a potential starter in 2021. That urgency would probably not exist with Tyreek because he was a 5th-round pick. Like, they obviously want him to contribute. They drafted him. But it's not the same. It's not the same when a 1st-round pick. That's why it's so hard for the 7th-round picks to make the team. Right? Because no one cares how many reps you get in camp. You just get on special teams and be a gunner. Right? But when you're a 1st-round pick, it's like, we don't really care if you play special teams. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Jets don't really care if Garrett Wilson plays special teams, right? I don't need him as a gunner. But if they took Garrett Wilson, with pick like 178 in the 5th round, Garrett would have been covering some punts, right? And it wouldn't have been the urgency to make sure he gets on the field and gets the reps. So I think Tyreek is probably going to fall victim to that for the reasons mentioned in the question. You're probably going to have, who are all the guys again? You got DT, Uchenna, and Boye right there. Yeah. That's all dudes. Those are all 2nd-round picks, by the way. I'm pretty sure. So you got all them dudes, and yeah, they might pick up a guy. Like, what if they get Will Anderson? They're going to make sure Will Anderson gets some reps over Tyreek. That's 4 dudes right there. I feel like we're missing somebody else who was on the team last year too. Oh, Alton Robinson. Like, even that might be a guy when his knee heals up. You know, even Bam Johnson. His name's Darrell Johnson on the roster, but Bam Johnson. He's a guy. He comes back. Like, just the line, he's going to be in the back of the line. And It's not even a talent thing. It's just like it's just a resource allocation thing. They're going to want to see Tyreek, but they're going to probably ask him to be on special teams more than anything else to start. So hopefully he balls out though, because if they could pop, like that's one of those people keep asking us how they can get like their roster up to speed really fast. It's to have a 5th round pick like that turn into a guy, like the other Tariq did. Like Tariq turned it into a dude as a 5th round pick. Well, that helps you. So yeah, hopefully he pops as a 5th round pick, Tariq Smith, that is.
I screwed up, Mike. I forgot to ask this question when we were talking about the draft, but I'll go ahead and squeeze it in now. This is from @TeamMike206. Who stood out to you at the Senior Bowl during the weekend?
All right. Let me bring up my notepad and put my glasses back on for this one.
Oh, Lord.
I'll put my other glasses back on because some other ones I was hurting my eyes. It was like 3 a.m.
Oh, okay. Those are cool. I can live with those.
Yeah. Okay. It was some cheap ass glasses. The ones I got there from the Dollar Tree. All right, here I'm going through my notes. All right, Deion Henley, and Deion Henley.
That was clever.
Yeah, no, for real though. Deion was a baller, man. Me and Chris are 2 kooks, so I'm biased to the Washington State guys. But no, objectively speaking, though, he was one of the 2 guys from the Senior Bowl at linebacker. There were 2 linebackers that stood out to me. Ivan Pace Jr., I think is from Indiana, and then Deion Henley from Washington State. Both of those guys really good in the pass rush stuff, which is just a hard drill for running backs. God bless them. That looks like one of them drills that turns kids into baseball players as a kid. Like when they try out for football in like middle school, they do that drill. I'm like, all right, let me see if I can pitch because this hurts. But Deion was really good in that, and Deion looks so smooth in coverage. And that was the thing I wanted to see from him when I was looking at guys I wanted to watch at the Senior Bowl, because Deion can run and hit. That's not really a problem. Doesn't shed blocks as like physically as I'd like. He kind of like does the little Kim to get around him a little bit. You kind of see Jordan Brooks do some of that too. Yeah, the little Kim like sliding around. Yeah, kind of does that a little bit. But down there, he was so comfortable, in space. Like you look at some of his reps and some of the pass rush stuff. Maybe I'll tweet out some clips. Or excuse me, not pass rush. The one-on-ones with the running backs. He was winning. And Deion's a former receiver, so that makes sense that he was good at that. So he's a guy that's why he was in my linebacker plan that you gave a C to.
I said B, man. I corrected myself. Don't play.
Yeah, I had to go to your office hours to get the grade changed. You're killing me. Up front, though, there was 2 guys I like. I like John Michael Schmitz, the center, I think from Minnesota. He's from. Loved him. I thought he was really good, just moving guys out the way. The pass pro stuff was like fine, but I was like, yo, you put him in the right scheme and ask him to block, he'll be solid. The same thing could be said for Osiris Torrance, the kid from Florida, at guard, though. Michael Schmitz was a center, and then my man Osiris from Florida was the guard. And Chris, you said you looked at some dudes too, right? A couple of the receivers that I mentioned.
Once you mentioned Tank, even though he's, more like a
smallest dude named Tank you'll ever see.
He's not a tank, but I watched. I had his highlight tape on loop. The dude reminds me a lot of Amon Ross St. Brown. A little raw, but man, is he electrifying. He gets the ball, making dudes miss, stopping on a dime, catching the ball with his hands. Like he's confident, like, as if he knows he's the best out there. And whoever lines up against him, he can't be touched. And then I looked up his stats. He had 17 touchdowns.
Yeah.
What? So getting in the end zone might not be a problem for him. And I know Mike hates the screen, but if there's one person that I believe can revitalize this quote unquote or lifeless screen game, it's got to be him. So if there are
quotes around that, it's lifeless, brother. Lifeless.
Every now and then they get a screen for 5 yards.
For 5.
Hey, that's positive, all right? But I love his game. I know Mike specifically has touched on the Seahawks need a third wide receiver that can he can do it all. Slot outside, and he can catch it in space. He can catch a screen and just go. This is someone that I think can. But I also talked to Mike about who the Seahawks currently have. And that was a wide receiver that when he got in, I thought he played okay. But Derek Young, he is someone that I think there is plenty of potential. I don't know if Marquise Goodwin's coming back, but I thought he stepped up to the role and had a hell of a season. He got hurt at the end, so of course that didn't really help his didn't help him if he wants to return to the Seahawks, but I thought he did enough that, okay, maybe we can bring him back. So that's what I would say in that regard, looking at just what the Seahawks could potentially need, which is a receiver. And I liked once Mike said his name, I was like, let me see what this guy looks like, what he's doing. And boy, was he fun to watch. Like I said, I had his mixtape on loop. I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, he was good. You'd like Jaden Reed too from Michigan State, another receiver. He was wearing number 1. All the guys wearing number 1 was cooking. You have to if you wear number 1 down there. I feel like
there you go. You can't be number 1 and be ass.
Exactly. Trey Tucker as well. I think he's from Cincinnati. It was fun though, because I'm like a college football guy, so it was kind of fun to just be like, just watch the guys, see who I liked, and then then look them up later. I did the same thing you did with Tank. I was like, man, this number, I think he was wearing number 2 actually. Tank was. I was like, man, number 2 is just killing it, man. Let me see how. Look at, damn. And I peeped his numbers. It was the same thing with Osiris Torrance too. I think he was like an All-American, but I had never heard of him. So I was just watching. I was like, number 56, and White is killing it. So let me write him down. And then when I went to go back and go to get back to my laptop, I was like, let me look at this kid. Oh, he was a consensus All-American. No wonder he looks good out there. I felt the same way about Carl Brooks. I think he was interior defensive lineman from Bowling Green.
Damn, they couldn't give him a better name. Sound like he's 50.
Carl Brooks does sound like an old ass name. That's an old dude. Anyway, it was Carl Brooks, Bowling Green. I was looking at him. I got back and I'm like, damn, he had like 18 tackles for loss or something like that. Playing on the edge at 300 pounds at Bowling Green. He was tearing it up. So that was a fun thing to do. I didn't have any bias or anything when I was just like watching. I was like, who are the best football players on the field? Who stands out to me? And then I'll go back and look and see if their stats were eye-popping. And that worked out a lot of the time. Like, that was cool. Another guy I got to throw in there is Riley Moss, he's got to be the last white cornerback on earth. Like, I was sitting there watching. I was in the stands. I was like, hey, wait a minute. Those legs white? Hold on. Because he had sleeves on. So I was like, hold on. He ain't get my binoculars out. Hey, Google. I was like, who's number 27 in black? And Google said, there's a white guy named Riley playing corner. And he was pretty good. He was pretty good. Deceptive speed, too. And he clocked the fastest time of the day on the GPS little trackers that they wear. I think it was like 20 miles an hour on the first down. Okay. He can run a little bit. I don't know if he'd be a Seahawks guy. He's got really short arms for outside corner. I think it's like 30 inches, which is well below the threshold that Pete likes. But he did stood out. He was good. I wrote him down. I was like 27 in black. I was like, let me go look him up when I get home. And then one last one is J.L. Skinner, safety from Boise State. I could see if he came to the Seahawks getting moved to corner, because he actually does look like a Seahawks corner. Super long arm, about 6'4", about 205, 206, something like that. Yeah. But he was playing like box safety. And boy, he's a strong dude. I would love to see him with some pads on, like in an NFL uniform. So yeah, I had a lot of guys that stood out. Like I got my scout on. I felt good about that. So yeah, there's a lot of dudes. There's a lot of dudes out there who got busy, but those are my favorites.
Let's spin it back to, let's talk maybe some division and where the Seahawks stack up. This one is from Dennis Gill, 10. We know the Niners or the Rams are the number 1 team in the division, and the Cardinals are about to rebuild. But the Hawks, number 2. Could they be number 2 if they have a good draft / free agency, even with Sean McVay, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, and Kupp returning?
Yeah, I think the fight for number 2 is like legitimate. The Rams, like again, the question suggests they were missing a lot of talent. It's not like the Rams just missed a couple guys. They missed their 3 best players, or at least 3 of their 4, depending on where you feel like Bobby Wagner falls among their best players, or Jalen Ramsey. But Kupp, Stafford, actually, yeah, Stafford's not one of their 3 best players. I take that back. But he is one of their 3 most important because he's the quarterback. So I thought losing those guys, that's just crazy. That throws off their whole, throw this whole season out the window. I know their offense wasn't very good even when it did have Kupp and Stafford, but like it torpedoed when they lost those 2. And then you lose Aaron Donald. Come on, man. It's like the Avengers losing Iron Man. Like, come on, man. You can't really.
They did okay though, Mike.
They didn't make no more movies after they lost Iron Man. What you mean? They stopped making the movies. That's how big he was. They keep making these Thor joints and Black Widow shits. They ain't make no more Iron Mans after they lost, bro. Even they made another Black Panther without T'Challa. They ain't making no more Avengers without Iron Man. That's how Aaron Donald is their Iron Man. But I do think that they do need to have another draft like 2022 if the Seahawks want to catch up. And it can't just be a good draft. Like, if you look back, they've actually had some like okay draft. Like 2017, they had a lot of flops in there, but then like Shaquille Griffin was good throughout the duration of his rookie deal. So was Chris Carson. I mean, even David Moore giving you wide receiver 3 numbers as a 7th round pick is like pretty valuable. So they got some guys in there. But I guess that was still like a bad draft. But like 2015 gave you Frank and Tyler. Like, that's an okay draft because the other like 6 picks or whatever stunk. So I think you need, and then you got like 2020. It's like an okay-ish draft. You got Darrell Taylor, you got D-Lou, Jordan Brooks, DJ Dallas, Colby Parkinson. I think Freddie Swain's in that. That's like an okay draft. Like, no Pro Bowlers in there. You just got like some solid contributing players. Only maybe like 1 or 2 that you have to pay for a second contract. But a 2022 class was like a couple guys that you don't have to pay. Like Abe Lucas and Charles Cross look like guys that are be second contract guys. Same thing with Tariq. You need those type of dudes in this 2023 class to catch the Niners or even catch the Rams, I think. You can't just have like a solid class. You need studs who are right away studs. Not like Boye is like okay, yeah, he could be something. Same thing I feel like with Kobe. Whereas Tariq and like Abe are like, oh no, there's something now. That's the difference. Even Ken. Sorry, I'm leaving out Ken. Ken is something right now. So I think that that's what you need to catch those guys. And preferably, like I mentioned earlier, the middle round guys. Because the middle round guys, that's where you get like Chris, you ever been cleaning up and you find and you go through some old pants and you find $5 in there? You know what I mean?
To be honest, I have probably never experienced. No, I'm kidding. I have.
Yeah, everybody. You found some money in the couch or something like that. You know, like that's what it's like when hitting on the middle round guy. It's like, yeah, it was always your money anyway, but you thought you wasn't really gonna have it. You know, now it's like, let's say you take a receiver in the 4th round and he's just as good as like Doug was. You know, that's incredible value, right? Not the same as if you take a guy in the 1st round and he's as good as Doug was. So it's like, well, I expect that guy to be as good as Doug Baldwin was. I took him with pick 17. Right? He better ball. So I think that's what they have to have. It can't just be, all right, my 1st round picks are good, my 2nd round picks are good. Everyone gets 1st and 2nd round picks that they expect to be good. You need to kind of cheat the system. Get you like a Max Crosby or a George Kittle. I think both of those guys might have been like 5th round picks. Like that. That is what you need specifically, is to have those middle round guys hit right away to catch up in the division.
This next one is from Will Branch at Beeman 5385. Willie Beeman, maybe? Interesting. In the 3 games the Seahawks played the 49ers this past season, in my opinion, pretty large gap. Whether it be talent or scheme, do you think the Seahawks can close that gap in one offseason?
Man, Chris, the Niners are good. The Niners are so goddamn good. What do you think they can close it in one offseason?
No, unless they hit on everything. I mean, free agents, draft, and Geno just got to play at another level. If those 3 things happen, okay. But that's not easy to do. If it was easy, the NFL wouldn't exist because everybody would be. That's just a lot. They can do it, but that is a lot, man. The Niners they're a good football team. Think about it. They lost every quarterback that they could ever have. And they still managed to be the number 2 team in the NFC. That's hard to do.
And I think they had the league's best point differential too, like in the regular season. Like they were whipping ass on that.
Yeah, that's another good point. They weren't winning 17 to 14 games. They were beating teams by 10 plus points or more.
Yeah, it was
on a weekly basis with their backup quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant. So that tells you the gap. Defense was crazy. Offensively, Brandon Ayuk has figured it out. They got guys that, what's his name? Jennings he's like the possession receiver.
Jennings,
yeah, he just, 3rd and long. All right, we'll bring him in, hey, run a dig route for 13 yards, 1st down, run a slant, 1st down. They have dogs everywhere. Seahawks aren't quite there yet. Can they get there? 2-3 seasons, sure, but one off season, that is going to be hard to duplicate.
Yeah, and I think they need some guys to have all pro seasons, even guys who are already on the team currently. Like I think we talked about this in the past, but like the Niners have several all pro players on both sides of the ball. Trent Williams, Fred Warner, Debo, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, even Hufanga. Like these are all guys. Nick Bosa. These are all guys who've been first team All Pro. I think the only guy in the Seahawks who's been first team All Pro is Jamal. I want to say. I think guys have gotten votes. DK's gotten some votes. Quandre got votes. I think even Tariq got votes, but like first, and then I think Tyler was as a returner, maybe his rookie year. But I'm talking like first team All Pro, like talent. That's what you need. And you can have guys. Tyler could easily have that type of season. I think DK could too. You just need them to have it, So I think that's what's needed on the jump as well. Not only hitting, but then some guys taking like that leap, like Debo did. What did Debo have in 2021? Like 1,400 yards.
Insane.
As a receiver, though, that wasn't an all-purpose number. I think like 1,400 yards just catching the ball. Not to mention what he was giving you as a running back too. So they need a season like that from somebody, and they need it could even be Noah Fant. Really, like he's a guy they're invested in as well. Maybe he has an all-pro season, but that's what you need. You can't just have guys who are like, oh, he's solid. Somebody got to be like, oh, nah, he's like unfuckwittable, to quote, Fabulous.
This next one comes from Chihuahua Loco. We got quite a few from him. What is the window for the Seahawks plan to win the Super Bowl? Assuming they go with Geno, it feels like they're on a 3-year deal. Also, Seahawks had a great year, but what is the likelihood that they finish? A, better than last year. B, worse. Or C, stay the same?
Man, I feel like that was a lot of options there. So let's see. The first one, what was the first part of that?
Super Bowl window, 3 years or less.
Yeah, I think every team should operate. I've said this before on the pod, and I firmly believe this. And all of the knowledge that I gain over off seasons and talking to people really just reaffirms this. You really should just be operating in a legitimate 2-year window. Like if you just can't plan for the growth that you'll need 3 years down the road. Like guys get hurt, guys just fall off. Usually if you feel like you have a window, like right now, if you're a team, it usually means you have some guys who are old on the team that are probably not going to be there in that important positions too. Like if you're think of a team even like the Eagles, they've got some dudes who are contributing who've been there for a little bit. I don't think if they're 3 years from now, we'll still have Darius Slay playing at all pro level. I wouldn't count on that. I wouldn't count on that with Fletcher Cox. I wouldn't count on that with Brandon Graham. Right now, granted, that's just 3 dudes, but that does matter, right? Those 3 dudes are part of the big reason why they are where they are currently. So, and every team has that. Even if you're the Chiefs, 3 years down the line, okay, do we still have Frank Clark on the roster? Frank's one of the best postseason pass rushers ever. How many years is Travis Kelce going to be unstoppable? And every team has a couple of those guys. Yes, getting a good core is important, but just having the core is not enough to get you there. There's all these other pieces too. And if you just think in 3 years, guys will take every little incremental step that you need, it doesn't work like that. Growth is not always linear in the NFL, particularly on defense. Your defense can be elite in 2017 and it can be garbage in 2018. Your defense could be trash in 2021, then elite in 2022, and then go back to being mid in 2023. There's too much fluctuation, particularly on that side of the ball too, to depend on just oh yeah, no. In 3 years from now, we'll be straight. It's a lot of stuff to go right. And there's way too many injuries and stuff, particularly on defense, do that. So yeah, I think the Seahawks should be operating in let's try to win in the next 2 years, right? Or just always be thinking at least 2 years out. So right now they should be thinking, all right, we need to win in 2023. Worst case scenario, 2024. And then next year, just be looking these 2-year windows. I know they sign guys for longer than that, obviously, but even look at the Seahawks. They really don't put much guaranteed money in dudes' contracts past the second year, if any at all, right? Because they know, hey, this dude could fall off a cliff. He could get hurt, especially particularly on defense. So I think the window is now. If you're going to do it, I'm not a big fan of a QB at 5. I think someone asked that. One of our questions. No. We're going to pay Geno. Go ahead and try to win with Geno right now. Dude's 32 and is about to enter his 4th year as a starter. He's got fresh legs-ish, kind of ish. I'm around Geno's age, and my legs are not fresh. And ain't nobody hit me. So I know his can't be entirely fresh. But, yeah, I think the window needs to be now. I feel like, we can just grow. Nah, not with the staff who's, Chris, I was thinking about this the other day. This is about to be Pete Carroll's 14th draft.
It's insane.
That's No wonder he don't want to rebuild. He gonna get fired if he starts to rebuild. And I can see why some teams are like, all right, it's gonna take us a little bit, like the Giants, the Lions, the Jaguars. But even then, like you see, like look at some of these teams that just named, they were right there on the precipice of making their conference championship game, right? Like the Giants made a divisional round, the Jags made a divisional round in the first year of their coaches. So in the next year, Daboll, the Giants, and Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, they should think like, all right, this is our window. They shouldn't be thinking in 3 years it's our window. That's dumb. Try to win right now. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Sorry, that was really long.
Part 3. Seahawks finished with a better, the same, or excuse me, better, worse, or the same record. Or
what record you got? Give me the Seahawks 2023 record. What you got?
So
I'm not gonna hold you to it now, but I mean.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I said, what did I say? 9-8. Mike was I said 8. I said 8-9, and Mike was like, "You think they won 8 games? Go to the schedule, Chris, and give me the 8 games." Boy, did I struggle.
Yeah, I about to say you struggled finding me 8 there. Yeah.
But I will say, you know what? Right now, this team will win. I'll say 8 games again. 8-9.
8-9. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably right there at 9 with you. The one game, it's so crazy how much winning scores in like that are decided by one possession changes everything. Chris, did you know the Vikings won 11 one-score games this year?
Disgusting.
11. They won 11 one-score games.
That is, they need help. That is ill.
Yeah, that's because they win? They win like 13-4 or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were 11-0 in one-score game. You asked me how many games the Vikings gonna win next year. I might win like 5.
Yeah, right? They're gonna be.
They are due for some just massive regression.
And
some of those one-score games.
And their defense was awful.
Awful. Brian Flores ain't gonna fix that shit right away. He's not. he's not. He's gonna go over there and be like, "Dang, our best safety is white."
Oh man.
Nah, Harrison Smith is all right, but
he's cold, man.
Yeah, he's old. See, another team. Old guy is part of the core.
No, I said he's cold.
Who, Harrison?
Yeah, he's still got it.
He's not cold. Still got it. Cold are not the same to me.
Man, to me it is. Damn, what you talking about? Cold in the. Move along. Answer.
That's right. Speaking of cold, real quick, the thing I did catch at the Pro Bowl. Did you see? It was Ryan Clark. He was interviewing Jared Goff for one of them throwing competitions.
I didn't see it, but what happened?
He asked him. He was like, "Yeah, Jared, throwing in the dome is much nicer than that cold you used to throwing up to in Detroit, huh?" And Jared was like, "I mean, we play indoors in Detroit." I'll find the clip. I'll find it for you. I wonder why he was asking him that shit. I was like, has Ryan never played in Detroit?
Man, probably not.
He never watched the game there. So
probably not.
He did a really good job on that podcast with Geno, the Pivot podcast. But yeah, well, Jared was so nice about it. I looked at the dude like, Ryan, what are you talking about, dog? Have you been to Detroit, bro? Like,
do you watch football? No.
For real? That's a legit question, though. Like, Detroit plays on Thanksgiving every year. Games always on national television indoors. Anyway, no, Harrison Smith's not cold. I forgot what. We both. Would you say 8-9? I said 9-8. Yeah, I think that sounds like realistic for next year. Maybe 10-7. They get like some one-score wins in there. Get that Vikings luck.
This next one comes from Big Ginger Kid, Nicholas Peter Dale. Is Chris Carson doing okay?
That's. I'm glad someone mentioned that. I did talk to some people close to Chris who were down at the Senior Bowl, and it wasn't a long combo because I didn't want to prod into Chris's life. But it does sound like Chris is doing fine. I don't know the status of his neck or anything. I just say, hey man, how's he doing? Sound like he became a father last offseason. I don't want to mess up the gender, but he did have a child, so I think he's at home in Atlanta, raising his kid, raising his family, which. And the big picture of life is more important than whether he could play running back. Hopefully you hope his neck is okay. I didn't know that he had a child, so that was cool. I think Chris is like 28, something like that. So that's cool, man. He got paid. I think he took care of his mom. Because I know she wanted a new crib because her crib burnt down when he was in JUCO. So got them a crib. I'm pretty sure he bought himself a crib. Now he's a family man. I didn't talk about Chris very long when I was down there, but I did run into some people who know him, and that's the update I've got. I'm glad someone asked that, man. Shout out to Chris Carson, man. I hope he's doing all right.
This next one comes from Scott Nelson. Will the Seahawks re-sign Geno Smith Why or why not?
All right. Chris is on the fence on this one.
Oh man, I talked about it with you off wax. I honestly don't know. I said Russ was returning, and what did they do? They shipped the man out, and I'm like, oh, okay. So Geno's saying all the right things. Pete Carroll's saying all the right things. John Snyder's saying all the right things. I don't know. They might draft a guy, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is what the Seahawks are doing. Mike, what do you have?
I think that Geno will be on the roster in 2023. I'm very confident in that. I do think a notable difference between Russ and Geno was that Russ was, for reasons that I don't necessarily fault him for, searching for greener pastures, right? Like he just was. Like he wanted out. He asked for a trade, they traded it. Geno's not at that point in his life. Like for Geno, this probably is the greener pasture. You know what I'm saying? Like he'd been other places, it didn't work out. And now he's here, a place that, makes him feel seen, where he had the best year of his professional career. Because a couple of them seasons at West Virginia, they ain't gonna top those. That boy was slinging that joint. So I can understand if this is not like the best year of his whole career, but like for his pro career, Pro Bowl, balling out, probably going to win comeback player of the year this week or on Thursday, whenever that award show that I'm not going to watch comes on. Yeah, so I think that's a big difference. I do think that Pete Carroll, when I brought up that what year of draft he's in, like 14 years is a time that's like when you find a quarterback you think can get you to where you need to be, you do what you got to do to keep him if you have say over the personnel. I think that's what it'll come down to. Like Pete has lost a few of those battles. It sounds like Pete wanted to keep Bobby, for example. Eventually, he had to just take the L. Pete wanted to keep Russ. Eventually, he had to take the L. I don't think Pete will take the L on this one and lose Geno. After like back-to-back years losing quarterbacks is just going to frustrate the hell out of that dude. He old, man. He can't handle all that. So for that reason, if nothing else, I do think he will be on the roster in 2023. I can't guarantee he gets a long-term deal. I think I would feel good about that. Like if I had to go place a bet in Vegas, I would do it that he gets one. But if nothing else, I feel confident the 2023 Seahawks are going to be quarterbacked by Geno Smith because the head coach who has personnel say is going to say, hey, y'all need to do what it takes to get this guy so we can go out here and win a championship so we can all not get fired in 2023.
This next one comes from Matt. How will Seattle go about sorting re-signings once Geno signs a new contract, assuming it is $30 million average per season? Even if a fair chunk of that is shifted to the 2024, et cetera, that still leaves not much to bring back some of the Seahawks guys that they want to and or go out and get new ones.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. Yeah, I think even if Geno was to make like 30 million a year or 25, 28, whatever, a lot of that would be a cap hit. The cap hit, I bet you his year one cap hit is probably like anywhere from 12 to 18 million dollars. Even if he's making 30 million a year, just because you can finesse cap hits in that way. That would be my thought on that. But honestly, you look at their unrestricted free agent list, Chris, ain't that many dudes who I'm like, yo, you gotta have him back. Like it's not that. I think my list would be, I don't know if there's any, I know you like Marquise Goodwin coming back. I think like Puna, if you gut the rest of the D-line room, like if you were to move on from Shelby and Q, I think Puna would be a priority at that point. Puna should probably be up on the list of priorities regardless. But he's a guy you can finesse that cap hit too. I think if you were to release or trade Gabe Jackson, Phil Haynes becomes like a guy like, oh, you should get him back. After that, though, there's some guys I would like back, but I'm not saying like Tyler Ott, for example, but I don't think like it's the end of the world there. Let's see. Who else is on here? I would like Bam Johnson back, but it's not like the end of the world. If he doesn't, after that, Travis Homer, another guy. It's like that would be Nick Bellore. Never mind, that's priority. Bring Nick back. That's shout out to Nick. Nick, come on the podcast. Other than that, though, you don't really need that much money to retain your own guys. I think restricted free agency is where you probably have a couple guys like Tanner, Ryan Neal. I'd say Ryan's a bigger priority than their entire unrestricted class besides Geno. I think Ryan will be. And then after that, your exclusive rights free agents. These are all guys who will be on minimum deals, so not much. So Miles Adams and Michael Jackson, and then Godwin. I don't know how to pronounce Godwin's last name, but after that, I don't really think you need that much bread to re-sign your own guys. And especially if you're going to cut some dudes and, maybe even restructure Noah's deal or something like that or give him extension. Yeah, the roster needs new players, and I think you can go get a lot of those guys with your 10 draft picks and maybe only pick up one or two dudes in free agency. I think that should be the plan. There's not a lot, like we said earlier, ain't that much value in free agency as is.
We got two more. This next one comes from at Young Greek Opa. How close do you think the defense is to contend for another Super Bowl?
And this is why it's did I already mention, right, that I rewatched Super Bowl 49?
Yep.
I did. Yeah. Guys, we are very far away from that. That defense was nasty. And I knew that, but I loved watching it with all the knowledge that I have of football now. And it was just like watching, they were so top heavy in that game. Like their good players were not just good players, they were fantastic. Like Earl was fantastic. Brady didn't even throw at Sherman that game. I forgot about that. Maybe he did like once. Like Sherman was really like that for real. Like it was, we're not even going to throw at this dude. Like for example, it's different. This is not really a knock on Tariq. It just kind of shows where he has to grow as a corner. In the wild card round against a rookie quarterback, part of their game plan was to throw at the Seahawks' best corner, which was Tariq. In the Super Bowl against the best quarterback ever, or at least the GOAT, I don't think he's the best, but the greatest quarterback ever, they did not throw at all at the Seahawks' best corner, which was Sherman. They barely even threw at the Seahawks' number 2 corner in that Super Bowl. That just kind of shows you the difference in levels. Like a rookie was like, we're going to target 2-7 over there. We're going to keep throwing at him. Brady was like, I ain't throwing the ball anywhere near 2-5 the entire game. He still threw for a shit ton of yards in that game. So I do think they're far from that particular unit. But even then, you look at some of the defenses that have made it. Some of these, like I was looking at, I'm gonna go rewatch later this week the Bucks Super Bowl that they won. Boy, they were stacked up front. There's a reason they was on Mahomes' ass. They had dudes, bro. That it wasn't even just on the edge. I mean, you're talking like Vita Vea coming up the gut, smoking cats. Like, I don't remember exactly who. I know they had guys like Shaquille Barrett. What's his name? They had a couple guys just flying off the edge. Joe something, I think. Like
Pierre Paul.
Yeah. Oh yeah. JPP. Like I think so. I gotta rewatch the whole game. But I just remember that team being so loaded, having good corners, good safeties, the best linebacker duo. So yeah, it takes quite a bit. These Chief defenses, low key, that keep making the Super Bowl or contending, these are the outliers because the Chiefs haven't been loaded on defense in their Super Bowls. They have not. They've had Frank. They've had Chris Jones. I think 1 year they had the Honey Badger, and that's about it. The corner situation has never been loaded. The linebacker situation has never been loaded. They've never been loaded really at safety like that. So they've had.
What is loaded?
What?
Their offense.
Yeah, they're getting there by off. But I know that this question particularly was about the defense. But yeah. I think they've got to get loaded fast at some spots. And like I said, it's got to take some. The Chiefs defense, where I think is to spin this towards the Seahawks, the current version of the Chiefs defense is a really good example of how you can get there if it starts up front. Like it starts up front with like Chris and Frank, and then the back end, I think they got like 4 rookie DBs that play for those guys right now. I know L'Jarius Sneed got hurt, but like they're playing rookies in the back end. I think Nick Bolton is one of their linebackers, a very good linebacker, but like how many of y'all knew his name before I just said it just now? I think he's number 32, I think. So because they're so stout up front, they got game wreckers up there, the back end can just not, it don't have to be star-studded. And maybe the Seahawks build theirs from back to front like they did with the LOB or front to back. Doesn't really matter. But they need one of those, either their back end or their front end, to be such game wreckers that the other guys don't have to be game wreckers as well. They just have to be solid. That's probably more realistic than being like the LOB. I'm really confident we'll never see another LOB. 4 straight years leading the league in scoring defense? What? Oh, that was disgusting. It's random because the homie brought it up to me, Chris. Did you know that the 2000 Ravens only gave up 10 points a game? 10. It was like 10.3 or something like that.
Doesn't matter.
That's what?
That's video game, man. That's playing Madden on rookie and be like, yeah, they can't score on me. That's crazy. 10
Yeah.
points per game. That's a field goal and a touchdown. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, no, I don't know the specifics of it, like how they whether they had like some crazy streak or something like that. But yeah, it was. I don't know how many touchdowns they gave up. Also, that unit. Sorry, this is just under my brain because I was looking it up. They had a +10 turnover margin in their 4 playoff games. +10.
How is that possible?
Yeah, no, that defense was like that. We're not going to see the defense like
how
that.
many turnovers did Ray Lewis have under his belt, man? I'm sure he had half of them.
That's a good question. I didn't look at the specifics. Like I was just looking at some of the team stats, but I was like +10. Holy hell! Like even just forcing 10 turnovers is pretty crazy.
And how many games they play again, Mike? 3 or 4? Okay,
I think they went 4-0. I want to say that's still nuts. So yeah, that was
2 turnovers a game. If 2.5, damn near.
Yeah, they were they were +2. Yeah, I think they had like 12 turnovers forced, and they only committed 2 on offense. I think that's how they got the +10. So yeah, like 12 turnovers in 4 games, something like that. It's like pretty nuts. I think that was how the breakdown goes. So anyway, my point being, it takes some being loaded, at least either in the back or the front, to get you there. I think the Seahawks' quickest path there is probably the back end because of Tariq, Jamal, and Quandre, but it doesn't matter. Either load it somewhere so you can help out the other guys.
This last one comes from Daryl Bosaki. Which past Seahawk would you love to see most get hired as an assistant coach?
You want to go first? You want me to give mine?
I'll go ahead. I would love to see Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman is a lot of knowledge of the game. He's one of the best to ever do it, I think. And I think he could teach a lot. I think he could teach what he's done to a lot of these younger cats. Like having Tariq Woolen learn from Sherman, I think his game would just get that much better because they have the same build. Obviously, Tariq's faster, but the athleticism is there. He just needs the mental. And I think Sherman would be the perfect guy to help him mentally get there. And once he has that, man, there's no telling how great Tariq could be.
Yeah, I would love Sherman. Sherman specifically has to be the coordinator. I think burning him as a position coach, nah. I need him I need him just to be able to coach the whole defense, man. He would be so passionate. He needs to be one of those coordinators who's then available after the game because I would love to hear him just talk shit. Coordinators usually aren't. It's usually just like, head coaches and then like Jerry Jones.
You know how many times Sherman would be like, yeah, I knew what the offense wanted to do before they even did it. I told my guys this is what they're going to do, and that's why we had 3 interceptions. Next.
Yeah, no, exactly. It would just be excellent interviews. It'd be like Anthony Edwards of the NBA. Great. All of his are great. He's the only reason I watch anything Timberwolves. Mine is Doug Baldwin. Because I think and then I have the opposite thing with Doug. I would want him to be a position coach because I want him to just give him like 8-9 guys and just have those be his guys through thick and thin. Kind of very similar to how Ken Norton Jr. means so much to Bobby Wagner and Bruce and KJ Wright and even Mike Moe, I think, Malcolm Smith. Like those guys, those linebackers who played for him, love that man to death, go to war with him. He's at their weddings, whatever. They do anything. Like, I bet you if they got arrested, Ken would be on the list of dudes they call for bail before guys in their own family. Hopefully none of those guys get arrested. But you guys get my point. So I think Doug would end up being like that. Like those dudes would become better men, even if they never became better football players. I don't even know if Doug would want to coach, but I know he would make them dudes better men for sure. Like those guys would be great. Their home lives they'd be able to have someone talk about wives, kids, stresses of being rich and famous, mental health. He would get them boys right. No idea how he would be as a coach. But as like the X's and O's, I know he knows ball, but that part, I would love for that position, to see that in real time.
Just imagine the huddle, the game of life, fellas. It's more than a football game. It's the game of life. This opportunity you have in front of you to dominate. We want to be empathetic of what's going to take place on this field Sunday.
Yeah, like a really good example, y'all. We have an interview with Doug Baldwin. As soon as this is over, go check that out. It's on Spotify, YouTube, Apple.
Oh, yeah, when I asked him about route running?
Yeah, Chris asked him what the key to being a good route runner. Doug said empathy and stared into the camera. Me and Chris was froze. So, what? So I can only imagine, like, yeah, no, coach, I'm trying to stack him a little better. How can I? It's like, you got to have better empathy, son.
Excuse me? Can you define the word empathy? Let me see that.
Yeah, no, it would be fire. He would make an outstanding coach. So yeah, I'm glad we didn't pick the same one. So that's good. Doug and Sherm, 2 Stanford guys.
Oh, well, look at that. We might not have picked the same guy, but they went to the same university.
Yeah, we love those 2 dudes as Seahawks coaches or coaches just anywhere, but preferably with the Seahawks.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank you for stopping by on this Twitter mailbag, as you see on the screen below. If you're listening to us on the audio side, we appreciate all the love and support. We will keep coming back. I think we got one more plan for you this month. And then, of course, we'll get ready for the NFL draft, which is later in April, obviously. But
Combine, too. It'll be at the Combine later this month.
Combine as well coming up. So, yeah, we'll have a little bit more content for you. But, again, it is the off season, so we're going to enjoy this time away from giving you guys 2 pods a week.
I've been sleeping a lot, and it's been great. So, yeah.
So is there anything you want to add, Mike, before we get out of here?
Just appreciate the love and support on Apple, on Spotify, The Athletic, all that stuff, YouTube. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Wouldn't do this if it wasn't for y'all tuning in every week. So we will catch you guys next time. Stay safe out here. Peace.